is absolutely eye-opening.
It has been absolutely exponential, which is not great. Which is not great at all, if we're being honest.
Picture this scene. Breanna Stewart, two-time WNBA champion, MVP, and one of the most respected players in women's basketball, standing in front of reporters looking absolutely livid. And what she said next sent shockwaves through the entire league. Absolutely frustrated. They kind of just ignored everything we said. Now, you might think this is just another contract dispute, another case of players wanting more money, but here's what nobody is telling you, and this is going to blow your mind. The WNBA just lost $40 million this year. $40 million. In their most successful season ever. And the players? They're demanding a bigger slice of a pie that doesn't even exist. I'm about to show you the financial reality behind this CBA war that nobody wants to talk about, and why the owners can literally afford to ignore the players completely. Because when you see these numbers, you'll understand why Breanna Stewart and the WNBA Players Association are fighting a battle they can't win. Let me paint you a picture of how we arrived at this explosive moment. Last October, riding high on the unprecedented success of the Caitlin Clark season, the WNBA Players Association made what they thought was a power move. They opted out of their current collective bargaining agreement, confident they held all the cards. The players had every reason to feel confident. The 2024 season had been a phenomenon. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese had brought millions of new fans to the league. TV ratings had skyrocketed. The WNBA had just secured a massive $2.2 billion media rights deal. Team valuations were soaring. Everything pointed to a financial boom. So the players, led by Union President Nneka Ogwumike and stars like Breanna Stewart, sat down to negotiate what they called a transformational CBA. They wanted bigger salaries, a larger share of league revenue, improved working conditions, and most importantly, they wanted to be treated like the valuable assets they believed they were. Here's where it gets interesting. The players currently receive only 9.3% of total league revenue. Compare that to the NBA, where players get 50% of basketball-related income. The WNBA players looked at their growth, looked at their new media deal, and figured it was time to get their fair share. But then reality hit them like a freight train. The league's first CBA proposal came back, and according to Satu Sabali, it was honestly a slap in the face. The owners had basically ignored every major request the players made. Before I show you exactly why the owners felt comfortable doing this, hit that subscribe button if you're ready to dive deep into the financial reality that's about to change everything you thought you knew about women's professional basketball. Here's the bombshell that nobody in the mainstream media wants to discuss. Despite having their best season ever, despite breaking attendance records, despite Caitlin Clark mania, despite a $2.2 billion media deal on the horizon, the WNBA lost $40 million in 2024. Let me say that again. $40 million. Gone. In a year when everything was supposed to be perfect. But wait, it gets worse. This isn't some aberration. This is the 26th consecutive year the WNBA has lost money. 26 straight years. Since the league's inception in 1997, it has never, not once, turned a profit. Now here's where the story gets really interesting. The Washington Post reported that the league was actually projected to lose $50 million this year. So technically, losing only $40 million was considered a victory. Think about that for a second. In the most successful season in league history, the WNBA's idea of success was losing $10 million less than expected. You want to know why the owners can afford to ignore the players? Let me break down the power structure that nobody talks about. The NBA owns approximately 60% of the WNBA. When you factor in individual NBA owners' personal stakes in WNBA teams, that number jumps to around 75%. So essentially, the NBA and its owners are subsidizing the WNBA's losses every single year. And here's the kicker. NBA owners are getting fed up. According to reports from the New York Post, NBA owners have been pressuring Commissioner Adam Silver for answers about when they'll see any return on their investment. New York Knicks owner James Dolan has been leading the charge, demanding transparency about the WNBA's financial future. One NBA team executive told reporters, "The WNBA owes the NBA so much we won't see any windfall for years." Another said, "There's a bunch of owners who see Dolan as their hero for pressing Silver on these questions." Think about this from their perspective. You're a billionaire NBA owner. You've been writing checks to keep the WNBA afloat for 26 years. You've invested hundreds of millions of dollars with zero return. And now the players are demanding you give them more money from a league that's bleeding cash. The players keep pointing to that 9.3% revenue share and demanding the NBA's 50% split. But here's what they're not telling you, and this is crucial. The WNBA's revenue sharing system is structured completely differently. The current system gives players 50% of all incremental revenue above certain growth targets. The problem? Those targets were set based on pre-pandemic 2019 numbers and made cumulative, meaning they compound year over year. Even with 2024's massive growth, the league didn't hit those targets. Nneka Ogwumike admitted to Forbes that players have never achieved the 50% revenue share. Never. Not once in the history of the league. But here's the real financial reality nobody wants to discuss. The WNBA doesn't operate like a traditional sports league. It's more like a startup that's been subsidized by the NBA for decades. The league only sees about 40% of its own revenue because the NBA takes its cut, outside investors get their share, and what's left gets divided between teams and players. Even if the players doubled their revenue share and split the team's portion equally, they'd still only get about 20% of total league revenue, less than half what they're demanding. Now let me show you why this financial reality gives the owners all the leverage in these negotiations. The players think they're negotiating from a position of strength because of the league's growth and popularity. But the owners are looking at spreadsheets that show 26 years of losses and thinking, why exactly should we pay you more to participate in a league that's losing money? Here's the brutal truth. The owners could literally shut down the league tomorrow and save money. They lose less money by not playing than they do by operating. The only reason they keep the WNBA running is for the goodwill, the marketing opportunities, and the long-term investment potential. The players are essentially threatening to strike against employers who are already losing money on their product. It's like threatening to quit a job where your boss is paying you to work at a company that's going bankrupt. And here's another factor nobody talks about. The international money that players often cite as leverage, that's only available to a select few. Players like Stewart and Sabali can make serious money overseas because they're stars with EU passports or connections to wealthy international leagues. But the majority of WNBA players, they're not getting those lucrative overseas deals. Let me break down the financial mathematics that make this negotiation almost impossible for the players to win. The WNBA's new media deal kicks in for the 2026 season and will bring in about $200 million annually. A massive increase from the current $60 million deal. But here's what the players don't want to acknowledge. That money has to first go toward paying back the NBA's decades of subsidies before anyone sees increased profits. Think about it this way. If the NBA has been subsidizing $40 to $50 million in losses per year for 26 years, they're owed over $1 billion. The new media money will help, but it's going to take years before the league is truly profitable enough to justify the salary increases players want. The players are essentially asking for raises based on future revenue that may or may not materialize, while the owners are looking at current losses and decades of negative returns. And here's another uncomfortable truth. The growth the players are pointing to is largely tied to one player, Caitlin Clark. When she's not playing, viewership drops significantly. The sustainability of this growth without her involvement is questionable at best. So here's where we are right now. The players have until October 31st to reach a new agreement or face a potential work stoppage. Stewart and other stars are signing one-year deals to maintain flexibility, betting that the new media money will create massive salary increases. But the owners are in no hurry. They know the financial reality. They know that a work stoppage actually saves them money in the short term. They know that the players don't have the leverage they think they do. The most likely outcome? The players will eventually accept a deal that's better than the current one, but nowhere near what they initially demanded. The owners will make some concessions on working conditions and modest salary increases, but the fundamental financial structure won't change dramatically. Stewart's frustration is understandable, but it's also somewhat misplaced. The owners didn't ignore the players' demands. They looked at the financial reality and decided those demands weren't justified by the league's actual performance. Looking ahead, this CBA negotiation is going to set the tone for the next decade of women's professional basketball. The players' demands aren't unreasonable in theory, but they're not grounded in current financial reality. The real test will come in 2026 when the new media money starts flowing. If the league can actually turn a profit and sustain that profitability, then the players will have a legitimate case for significant salary increases in the following CBA negotiation. But until then, they're negotiating based on hope and potential rather than actual financial performance. And that's a difficult position to be in when you're dealing with business people who've been subsidizing your industry for over 2 decades. The bottom line is this: Breanna Stewart and the WNBA players deserve to be paid well for their talent and entertainment value. But they can't demand a share of profits that don't exist. The math simply doesn't work. So while Stewart's frustration is genuine, the owner's position is actually the logical one. They're not ignoring the players, they're responding to financial reality. And until that reality changes, the players' leverage remains limited. What do you think? Are the players being unrealistic with their demands, or should the owners be willing to take bigger losses to support women's basketball? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the business of sports.